Greetings, people from the internet. Here comes my first film review. Hopefully I'll do more, depending on how well this goes down. This film is about Pacific Rim, a giant monster versus giant robot film that came out this year, which is 2013. It features giant robots, or Jaegers, from the German word of warrior, and giant monsters, kaiju, from the Japanese name for strange beast. It's heavily influenced off Japanese culture, such as giant mechas and giant monsters, as well as various other things in the film with references to them. It's filmed from Guillermo del Toro, who is a renowned filmmaker for fantasy works such as Pan's Labyrinth, the two Hellboy films, which hopefully at some point we'll get a third one, and earlier films such as Kronos, and more recently I believe he was behind the took place in some kind of giant school. I've forgotten what it's called, but it's a horror film anyway. But this is it's very similar to previous films. I mean, Guillermo del Toro, sorry about that, usually has like fantasy films, and whereas this is more sci-fi than fantasy, there are still a lot of elements of fantasy in it, and visualized like previous Guillermo films. A lot of scenes in it remind me of Hellboy ones, particularly Hellboy 2, when if you've seen it, there's a bit where the elves in the beginning there's the elves, and I believe it's the part when Princess Noirde kills his father, and they're in it's not a chapel, but it's kind of like their world. But there's a bit in the film that reminds me of that bit, although more sci-fi with robots and loads of people walking around. But it does bear resemblance to previous Guillermo del Toro films, like I've just said. Now, the plot itself is a standard, not a standard film, but it's a simple enough film to follow. Basically, a giant kaiju with started to attack the world from a breach from, rather than space, is actually at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, where a gap has appeared between their dimension, where the kaiju come from, and our dimension, which is Earth, in which they come through, mainly in the film ranging from category, I believe 3 was the lowest one we heard about, up to the finale one, which is a higher category than 3, which I won't spoil for you. But, it's higher than 3, but 3 tend to be like the standard. Still quite powerful. I mean, early in the film, they state that in the little recap bit, which I'll go on about later. The recap bit, basically the first kaiju appeared, and it took them several weeks, I believe, to take down, and this was just the Navy taking them down. And it was just one, and they thought they'd won, but nope, more just kept coming, and creating loads of destruction and killing thousands upon millions of people. As they realized that more kaiju were coming, the humans decided to create giant robots to combat them, called Jaegers. These Jaegers are, giant mecha robots really, but they have to be piloted by 2 pilots who are in sync, basically, because they tried it with 1 person and it didn't work because they just the people who the people who did it the first time just basically died. Well, they didn't die, but they did eventually. But it was too much emotional and pressure for the 1 pilot to take. Only extreme and truly gifted pilots could pilot 1. There's a Jaeger introduced later into the film, which actually uses 3 pilots, which was quite an interesting thing to see. But having the 2 pilots, they have to be emotionally intertwined and basically think the same and be compatible, basically. So the 2 people have what's known as a neural handshake, where they basically become one person, and one person operates the left side of the Jaeger, and the other operates the right side of the Jaeger. I'm not sure where the third one went in the Jaeger with the 3 pilots, but it did have 3 arms, so one of them would have piloted the other arm. But early in the film, we're introduced to a brother trio, played by Charlie Hunnam and Diogo Clattenhoff, playing Rayleigh Beckett and Yancey Beckett. As they're both brothers, it's established that their neural handshake and their compatibility is quite high, with them both being at least genetically compatible. But throughout the film, we find out that you don't need to be genetic; you just need to think the same, act the same, and basically be compatible with the other person. Well, that's a bit about the Jaegers. Now we talk about the Kaiju. The Kaiju, well, being a fan of previous Kaiju films such as Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, fair enough, they're about the only ones I've seen. I haven't seen any of the other more famous ones. Well, they're the more famous ones, but other famous ones such as Gabaran. I probably said his name wrong. I'm sorry. I probably just called him completely different. But other ones such as him and Varan. But I've seen all the Godzilla films, so I'm not a novice and new to the whole kaiju cinema experience. But the kaiju, well, I've got to say that possibly some of the greatest kaiju I've ever seen. I mean, just some of the designs are just so, other than saying awesome, I don't really know what to say, but they're really, really amazingly, and they're not just like based off one creature. I mean, there's one we encounter later in the film which kind of looks like a lizard, like an iguana type thing with a mad tail. This was one of the last ones we see, but well, you'll see it if you see the film. You'll know which one I meant. And then suddenly it's battling and has its tail ripped off, and then suddenly it just changes complete. I mean, it still keeps the appearance, but it goes from looking like this like lizardy iguana thing into something completely different, which I won't spoil it to you because, well, when I saw it, my jaw dropped and just basically remained on the. Well, it didn't remain on the floor, but it might as well have done because it was just mind-explodingly awesome. Other kaiju, some from what I could tell anyway, some at least looked similar. Like say there was one that was early in the film. I haven't quite yet learned all their names, but this one had like a knife nose. It looked like a shark type thing, and I'm pretty sure we see him again later in the film, although like a more powerful version. It was difficult to tell. Now, well, the kaiju aren't really featured a lot in the film. Like anyone who's seen like previous Godzilla films, they'll know that. Well, the Godzilla films, they're not the Godzilla and the other kaiju's that are featured within the films aren't really in it for very long compared to the whole runtime, you know, because most of the films take place from the human's point of view. What makes this one quite different, other than it not being thingy, it's more of a full out. It's just a constant supply of kaiju, just constantly coming out of this rift at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. So there isn't just like, oh, we've defeated the monster, we've won. And also about this film is because it starts off with like a recap of what's previously happened. We take place in the story where man has actually been fighting these kaijus for years, basically. I think it was about 4 years, 5 years that they'd been fighting them. and created the Jaegers rather than just say like Godzilla, where Godzilla comes out of the ocean. They've never seen Godzilla before, and suddenly they just have to try and deal with it. It like skips all that aspect of the story where they've got here's the monster, let's defeat him, let's find a way to defeat him. They've got a way to defeat him, and they've been using him in Pacific Rim. So it kind of brings the story along a bit more. It's just that the kaijus tend to get more powerful, and the Jaegers get defeated, and the government, being the government, decides, you know what, these Jaegers, they're not really working. In fact, we're going to pull all funding for the Jaegers. We'll let you use the Jaegers that are currently available, which I believe was about 4. And the general thing is the government think, yeah, we're going to pull all the funding and just build walls. Stop the kaijus from destroying mankind and stuff by building walls. Of course, one that they build in Australia gets swiftly knocked down like it was nothing, basically, which... Well, yeah, I personally... Well, of all the kaiju films I've ever seen, I've never actually seen them just build a wall before, rather than thinking, yeah, we'll fire all our rockets and missiles at it. Nah, we'll just build a wall instead. Which was very interesting and, of course, didn't work. Now, the acting. Yes, we'll jump into the acting next. The acting... Well, there was no bad actors in it. I mean, I usually watch a lot of things, and usually I deem... I mean, I'm not a very good actor myself, so I can't really talk, but I sometimes encounter actors who you feel like are acting or they overact, and they just don't they don't come across as good actors to me. But all the acting in the film, I like, basically. I mean, from two of the strongest performances, of course, were Idris Elba, who's an amazing actor anyway, and I particularly like the acting of, apologies for the pronunciation of this as well, Rinko Kikuchi, who played Makamori, one of the main characters in the film, and one of the more important characters in the film. Of course, Idris Elba is like the head honcho of the film and is equally important. Ron Perlman again collaborates with Guillermo del Toro. He isn't in it for very long, but well, his role in this film is, well, usually when I see him, I always think of him as being, well, Ron Perlman, I'm not going to lie, he's one of my favourite actors. But usually when I see him, I just think, yes, he's amazing, and he's really awesome, but and he's like epic and legendary. But I think from his performance in this film, I can certainly state that he's now godlike, because his performance in this film, albeit short, is possibly one of the greatest performances of Ron Perlman I've ever seen. I mean, I'm not saying it's his best performance. Well, I've never seen a bad performance by him, but it's just the fact that he isn't in it for very long, but all the scenes he's in, he just steals, including, slightly spoilerful, but for those for those people who go to see films and leave as soon as the credits come on, I would strongly suggest staying for the mid-credits, just to see, something happens to Ron Perlman's character of Hannibal Chow, one of the best names I think I've ever encountered for a scene for a character. I'd stay in the mid-credits just to see a bit of closure for his character. The only other thing to mention, I mean, there's a lot of awesome actors like Charlie Day, who you may have seen in Horrible Bosses. I mean, that's where I've seen him, and he was quite hilarious as the crazy American scientist. And of course, Bern Gorman, who you may know from Torchwood, appeared in Dark Knight Rises and various other things. He plays like the British, well, I believe he's a British scientist who seems to have a bit of a bad leg, but he's like your you British stiff upper lip actor type person. The only other thing I can mention about the cast is there's an actor in it called Robert Kaczynski. Now I've previously encountered him in EastEnders, Yes, EastEnders. Quite a few years ago he was in it, and I did not like the character at all. I mean, the actors, I'm alright with the actor, but because of my experience with the character that he played, I know I shouldn't dislike actors because of their characters, but I don't dislike the actor. I just didn't like the character he played in EastEnders. But he is also in it playing. I wouldn't say he's a bad guy, but he's kind of one of your standard jock type characters. I say jock, he's not very nice to the hero, and then. But as the film goes on, we learn about him and we kind of like him a bit more. But yeah, he's the only. From when I was watching it, he was thinking, well, this is the bit of the film I don't like. But throughout the whole film, just one actor is someone I don't like, and by the end of the film, I liked him. So basically, I saw absolutely nothing wrong with this film whatsoever. Nothing wrong. One thing I did fear though, when watching the film, was I've seen a lot of screenshots and clips in trailers of the kaiju and the Jaegers having the battle, and they always took place. Well, the ones I saw took place at night. Now I'm not really a fan of night fighting. Only for one reason, is the lighting. I mean, for those of you who have ever seen Aliens versus Predator Requiem, well, amongst other things, they probably know what I mean, where the Predator and the aliens are fighting in the sewer, and you can't really see anything. You can see the odd tail and stuff, but if there's a battle, I want to watch the battle. I don't want to sit there for 15 or so minutes just looking at basically a black screen with the odd flash of light or whatever. But Pacific Rim handled them really well. I mean, there was a fight on the water, but we're not going to go into that because, spoilerful. But the fight in Hong Kong, which was the central main fight of the film. Well, not really main fight. Call it the semi-final. Semi-final in a way. It wasn't the final battle, but it was the one before the final battle. But it took place nighttime Hong Kong in the dark. But there was enough lighting around him, and the Jaegers create a lot of light. And the kaiju, who incidentally had a weapon I don't think I've ever seen a kaiju use. Well, certainly an organic kaiju rather than a one created say Mechagodzilla or whatever. He seemed to have some kind of EMP device, which was interesting considering a lot of the Jaguars worked on the Jaegers worked on electrical stuff, and so they actually got shut down, which was I've never seen a kaiju shut down an enemy just by basically cutting off the power. Which was quite interesting, really. Well, apart from when Godzilla used it against Mechagodzilla in, I believe it was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, when he ended up either punching or pulling Mechagodzilla's head off, which was awesome. Anyway, I was back to the fighting. There was enough light. There was enough darkness to say yes, it's nighttime, but there was enough light to actually see what was happening. So again, well, we go into the fight scenes now. The fight scenes were, I know they were mainly all CGI, but not once, much like when I'm watching the Godzilla films, I don't think, oh yeah, there's a guy in a suit there. I've never ever thought that while watching any of the Godzilla films, because I've just just got lost in the film. Not once did I think during Pacific Rim, because we're basically live in the world of CGI stuff now. Not once did I watch it and thinking, that was CGI. That was CGI. It just takes the fun out of it. I mean, yes, it's CGI, obviously, but not all of it, because Guillermo del Toro in the past has mainly used a lot of puppetry and stuff rather than going all CGI in the films. But I just lost myself in the film and just really enjoyed all the shininess, and it is one heck of a shiny film. The kaijus, like I previously said, are amazingly designed and sparkly, and the Jaegers, of course, giant robot type men that just run around blasting things, and they're some of the greatest. In fact, Yeah, I'd probably say they're better looking than the Transformers from the Michael Bay films. But they were really well designed and nice and shiny and came across really well. I think that wraps up this review. Please message or leave a reply if you feel I've missed anything out, which of course I more than likely have. Some notes to note though. I mean, as like I've said, a fan of like kaiju and monster films before, there are a lot of like little references. One of my favoriteest ones was at the beginning when the ruined Jaeger is found on the beach in Alaska. I think there's a grandfather, well, I'm guessing a grandfather and a grandson running around with a metal detector. And this instantly reminds me of previous scenes in particularly Godzilla Final Wars as well as other Godzilla films when there was a grandfather and a grandson just running around and then they come across the monster. In this case, they come across a Jaeger, but it was a nice little reference to the genre of giant monster films. And there are a lot more. No doubt I've probably missed quite a few, but I will certainly be looking out for them again in my next viewing, which will be within the next week. And, well, I hope you enjoyed this review. One last thing also to add is I'm quite a big, if you see a film, you see the credits, I watch the credits all the way through, just in case there's a promise for the end, a secret scene. Like I say, there is a scene in the mid credits, but there was a nice surprise waiting for me at the end of the credits as well. Something that I didn't know about, but I was hoping would appear. I mean, after all the thanks and stuff, there's a dedication to the monster masters of Ray Harryhausen, who created. Well, he is one of the kings and masters of stop motion. If you've ever seen Clash of the Titans. A lot of the early what's that pirate called? There's a pirate film. Sinbad. Yeah, he did a lot of work on Sinbad films as well. And of course, Ishiro Honda is also the film is dedicated to Ishiro Honda, who you will know hopefully as the creator of Godzilla back in co-creator. But he directed and wrote the first Godzilla film along with a lot of early kaiju films. I mean, it should be noted that Godzilla wasn't the first monster film. I mean, King Kong came quite a few years before it, but it was Godzilla that really stapled the whole idea of like the whole monster on the loose kaiju films. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed my video and well, it's not a video but audio. If you would like to see more or anything, subscribe. I don't know if I'll be reviewing films. More films, I probably will, depending on how well this goes down. Not sure what the next one will be, if I do, but no doubt it will be something fun, if not. I mean, I'm off to see the Wolverine in 2 weeks' time, so it might just be that. So, until the next time I speak to you, have a good time, and if you're thinking of watching the film, I recommend it because it is amazingly awesome. Okay, thanks again for listening, and I shall see you, hear you, and speak to you next time. Farewell.